planning so as to guarantee its editorial independence. This is, however, far from reality, given that UBC is too underfunded to implement its statutory obligation. Observation 3. UBC subvention, which includes salaries and wages to staff, was equally affected by 80% reduction on funding to subventions. With this, the corporation may fail to pay staff salaries and other operational activities. 4. Whereas many national public broadcasters operate under the government ownership and funding, UBC is subjected to operate as a commercial entity and forced to compete with the private entities. The committee therefore recommends that 1. Government should always ensure that Uganda Broadcasting Corporation is adequately funded to enable it to execute its mandate as is guided by the Broadcasting Policy of 2006. 2. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development should ensure that the presidential directive to annually provide Uganda Broadcasting Corporation with the shilling 30 billion from financial year 2024-2025 is implemented, and in interim to ensure that the supplementary release of a maximum of 24 billion to UBC is provided to achieve efficient performance of the corporation. 3. Uganda Broadcasting Corporation be granted increased support in forms of funding and treated as an entity dispensing public good to the people of Uganda other than as a commercial entity. And recommendation 5, UBC should be provided with UBC should provide attendant work plan and budget to support the proposed budgetary allocations for the financial year 2024 alongside the revamped work plan and costing to enable adequate government planning and funding. Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable Member, on implementation of Phase 3 of the Digital Migration Project. The committee notes that the implementation of digital migration policy was haphazard, uncoordinated, and lacked transparency. The process was rushed more to beat international deadline than to secure the best outcome for Uganda, and as such, its implementation has been greatly affected with a failure to complete Phase 3, which means that the areas whose equipments are out to be, which means there are areas whose equipments are ought to be urgently replaced. Most of the equipment has exceeded their lifespan and in urgent need of replacement, whose spare parts for most of them are no longer available in the market. The obsolete equipment also means Uganda Broadcasting Corporation cannot host as many stations as it should be, leading to loss of greatly needed revenue. In areas where new equipment was installed, the equipment has no redundancy provision to take care of situation where a fault occur. This means that repair cannot be undertaken when equipment is in use. The committee further observed that there is no remote network monitoring system to ensure that the equipment is monitored and faults are detected in real time. The absence of redundancy and network monitoring system means the disruptions are inevitable. The failure to pay the satellite fee of Uganda shillings of USD 1 million or equivalent of 3.7 billion to Intraset resulted into switching off of satellite connection to the country, and thus as only one Kampala station up and running with the 17 up-country stations off. Committee recommendation. Phase 2 of digital migration should be implemented to ensure an uninterrupted, smooth radio and television experience for all areas in Uganda. That the debt of $1 million or equivalent of 3.7 billion onto Interset should be urgently paid for the switching on of satellite connection for the 17 up-country sites, which will boost coverage of the national broadcaster. Government should also budget for subsequent payment for the satellite fee. Government should speed up the connectivity of the DTT sites and up-country stations through the fiber optic under the national backbone infrastructure, whose connection will be safer, cheaper, and more sustainable. UBC should budget for procurement of equipment to support redundancy and network monitoring system for all its sites and stations, which shall improve the quality of the network, minimize the possibility of blackouts when the fault occurs. Right Honorable Speaker and honorable members, the need to enhance coverage of the national broadcaster. A deliberate enhancement of radio and television coverage across the country will cater for remote regions of the country, as well as certain genres of public interest programming that private broadcasters are not willing or unable to invest in, where they are to be left out on their own. The committee recommends that government should urgently provide infrastructure to enable access to UBC radio and television network for all underserved areas. Government should also allocate the requisite funding to UBC for provision of direct home service, which will amount to 7.5 billion. Right Honorable Speaker, here the committee is recommending that if televisions like Star Times, GoTV are able to provide the disc and then decoder and receive satellites at home, why can't UBC provide the disc and decoders, and the citizens will only buy it once and receive the signals for about 17 or 20 channels without paying for them? This has taken long. So that's why we are asking for 7.5 billion so that UBC provides the citizens of Uganda with a decoder and the disc, and they install and they're able now to watch free, because most of the cases, the DSTV switches off and it is difficult for the citizen to access information. The revamping of UBC. In 2016, there was an effort to revamp Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. This was informed by the recognition that Uganda Broadcasting Corporation was unable to execute its mandate in the status quo at the time contained. As part of the process of revamp the national broadcaster, the committee was set up to look into the operations of UBC. The review committee produced a report with a wide range of observations that includes: 1, Uganda Broadcasting Corporation Act was not aligned with the broadcasting policy. The implementation of the digital migration policy was marred by lack of transparency and adequate public awareness. Uganda Broadcasting Corporation was not in compliance with the several laws, including UCC Act, the PPDA Act, National Social Security Fund Act, and persist violation of payment for pay as you earn and Uganda Revenue Authority. There was no proper record of an up-to-date valuation of UBC assets. UBC lacked a clear editorial policy to inform its decision-making and content strategy. And UBC radio and broadcasting infrastructure was completely run down and obsolete. Some of the transmission stations were not suitably positioned to achieve optimal coverage. Right Honorable Speaker and honorable members, the review committee made recommendation that touches on varieties of facets of UBC with the aim of enabling the corporation to fully execute its mandate, and this includes: 1, that UBC Act should be amended to align it with the broadcasting policy, guarantee of the corporation editorial independency, transparency in board selection and accountability to the public through Parliament, as well as securing funding. That an audit should be undertaken to establish compliance gap and process set in place to ensure good legal and regulatory standing, including with the National Social Security Fund and Uganda Revenue Authority. UBC programming should be informed by a clear positioning in the broadcasting market that is based on its mandate, among other considerations. Right Honorable Speaker, the review committee, unfortunately, most of the recommendations of UBC review committee have not been fully implemented several years later. The challenge observed by the review committee remains alive and has affected operationalization of UBC. Based on the above observation and recommendation by the review committee, the committee observes that the challenges that hamstrung the national broadcaster are still alive and well, and any attempt to improve UBC are bound to face stillbirth. The committee therefore recommends that UBC review committee should be the recommendation of UBC committee should be fully implemented With a view of improving the operation of the national broadcaster, the committee further recommends that the above recommendation be implemented within 2 years. UBC should be restructured with relevant and vibrant human resources put in place, which will ensure that mandate, performance management, terms of employment, and the nature of human resources will implement most of the recommendations of the review committee. Right Honorable Speaker, the enforcement of the collection of television license fee. A television license fee that had been introduced in 2005 was quickly abandoned at the inception following public outcry and the intervention of HE, the President. This was a big blow to the corporation because the license fee indicated in the Section 14 of the Uganda Broadcasting Act would ease the corporation financial burden. The committee observed that in the countries where the license fee has been maintained, the public broadcasters still command a considerable reach and share of the market. And this, coupled with the government funding for a mixed funding model, may just be the solution for Uganda Broadcasting Corporation's financial challenges. The committee recommends that Section 14(1)(e) of Uganda Broadcasting Act 2005 on the collection of television licenses should be enforced. Other operations of Uganda Broadcasting Corporation is penalties and areas and obligations of UBC. The committee established that indeed Uganda Broadcasting Corporation is encumbered with the various areas, penalties, and delayed obligations. Documentary evidence has been severally provided to the committee to demonstrate this, with this obligation amounting to Uganda shillings 84.063 billion, broken down as follows: Uganda Revenue Authority 18.16 billion, National Social Security Fund 46.670 billion, UCC 2% levy of 146,355 million, payable to other suppliers and service providers 12.217 billion, and staff gratuity of 6.864 billion. The UBC financial shows clearly that a new financing model that is predictable, adequate, and protects the corporation from undue political and commercial pressure is required. The committee there recommends that the Attorney General should provide an opinion on the legal status of Signet, which will further facilitate the process of waiving of UBC financial obligation with the Uganda Revenue Authority amounting to 2.41 billion. Ministry of Finance and Economic Development should provide for sustainable funding, including but not limited to the provision of vote status. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development should clear UBC outstanding financial obligations in order to wipe out its debt and allow it to resume a clear and firm financial footing. The Ministry of ICT and National Guidance should provide a subvention to cater for at least half of the salaries of UBC staff and all other utility bills in order to reduce the pressure of administrative costs and corporations' finance, as well as its ability to invest meaningfully in the content generation. Amendment of UBC Act. The committee observed that UBC Act 2005 specified the source of funding for the corporation, of which the following area need amendment. Section 14(1)(a) of the Act provides for any grant of capital nature from government. This section needs to be amended to take into consideration the recurrent expenditure which consumes a lot of corporations' insufficient funding. The committee therefore recommends that UBC Act be established a predictable and adequate public financing mechanism to support UBC a long-term planning and align the Act with the policy. In conclusion, Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members, the centrality of Uganda Broadcasting Corporation to provision of information to Ugandans through radio and television communication technology cannot be underestimated. Despite the presence of other technologies such as internet, the simplicity of radio and television remains the easiest, cheapest, and most readily available form of communication for most Ugandans. However, government commitment to UBC has over time been piecemeal, with a little efforts to guarantee secure and predictable funding, which allows medium and long-term planning. The national broadcaster is challenged in securing its independence and to remain relevant in the eyes of the public, thereby not inspiring much confidence. Clearly, UBC is a state-owned broadcaster, but it is ill-equipped to survive in a competitive business environment. Further still, Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members, given that most of the remote parts of the country are not serviced by private media sector and can only be accessed by the national broadcaster, government thus has the responsibility to ensure that all its citizens have access to information which can only be provided by the national broadcaster. Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members, I beg to report. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members, and I want to thank and recognize members of the committee for great work. Thank you.